My name is Lena Whitmore, and I'm 28 years old. 12 years ago, on Christmas Eve, my parents drove me to the airport and told me something that shattered my entire life. Your real family lives in France, my mother said coldly through the half-open car window. And then they left. Just like that. No hug. No goodbye. No explanation. I was 16 years old. And I was standing outside O'Hare International Airport in the middle of winter wearing pajamas and a thin jacket, holding a single suitcase. The moment everything changed. The car ride there had been silent. The kind of silence that makes your stomach twist. My father, Gregory Whitmore, kept his eyes fixed on the road like I didn't exist. His jaw was tight, his knuckles pale against the steering wheel. My mother, Patricia, sat beside him staring out the window. Neither of them spoke. Not once. The Christmas lights outside blurred past us as snow began to fall softly against the windshield. I remember thinking it felt strange. It was Christmas Eve. But there had been no tree in the house that year. No decorations. No presents. Just a suitcase waiting by the front door. The envelope. When we arrived at the airport terminal, my father finally spoke. "Get out," he said flatly. I hesitated. "Why are we here?" I asked. He reached into the center console and pulled out an envelope, handing it to me without looking at my face. Inside was a plane ticket. One way. Chicago, Paris. My chest tightened. "What is this?" My mother turned slightly in her seat but still didn't meet my eyes. "Your real family is there," she said. The words felt like ice in my veins. "What do you mean?" She sighed, impatient. "You were adopted, Lena." The world tilted. What? "We tried," she said, shrugging lightly. "But you've never really been ours." I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh. Waiting for her to say it was a joke. She didn't. "The truth they gave me. You belong in France," she continued. "Your mother died there. Your people are there. But, you're my parents." "No," my father said. The word landed like a hammer. "You're not." I felt something inside my chest crack. What did I do wrong? I whispered. Neither of them answered. Instead, my father opened the trunk and placed my suitcase on the curb. "There's an address in the envelope," he said. "A group home in Marseille. They're expecting you." My heart began racing. "I don't even speak French." "You'll learn. Please," I begged, tears already burning my eyes. "I'll do better. I promise." My mother finally looked at me. But there was no warmth in her eyes. Only annoyance. "The car's running," she said. My father got back behind the wheel. The engine started. And then they drove away. Standing alone. The snow kept falling. Cars passed. People rushed into the airport with families and suitcases and laughter. I stood there alone. A 16-year-old girl in pajamas. Holding a one-way ticket to a country she had never seen. I remember whispering one question over and over. Why? But there was no answer. The flight. The flight to Paris lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of staring out the airplane window while my life collapsed piece by piece. I replayed every memory of my childhood. Every birthday. Every dinner. Every "I love you." And I wondered if any of it had ever been real. By the time the plane landed, I had cried so much my eyes felt hollow. I stepped into France with nothing but a suitcase and an address scribbled on a piece of paper. The life I built. The group home in Marseille smelled like bleach and cheap soap. There were 10 other teenagers living there. Most of them had been abandoned too. But unlike them, I didn't even speak the language. The first year was brutal. I worked nights cleaning restaurants. I studied French during the day. I ate cheap bread and soup and told myself one thing over and over: survive. And somehow, I did. By 22, I spoke fluent French. By 24, I graduated from university. By 26, I became an architect working for a respected design firm in Lyon. Slowly, painfully, I built a life. One brick at a time. And eventually, I stopped crying about the past. The phone call. Then 3 weeks ago, everything changed again. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk reviewing renovation plans when my phone rang. Unknown number. French area code. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Hello. A calm male voice replied. Miss Whitmore? Yes. My name is Jean-Luc Moreau, he said. I'm an estate attorney in Provence. My stomach tightened. Estate attorney. Someone had died. I'm calling regarding Isabelle Laurent, he continued. Your maternal grandmother. The world went silent. My grandmother? Yes. There was a pause. I regret to inform you she passed away 2 weeks ago. I couldn't breathe. Because my adoptive parents had told me something very different. They told me my grandmother died years ago. They told me I had no family left in France. They told me I was completely alone. And now this stranger was telling me they had lied. Then he said something impossible. Miss Whitmore, the lawyer continued gently. Your grandmother left a will. And you are her sole beneficiary. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? She left you her entire estate. My hands began to shake. What estate? The vineyard in Provence. The villa. Her investments. He paused. The total value is approximately 23 million euros. The number didn't feel real. It floated in the air like something from a movie. Then he added one more sentence. There is, however, a complication. My heart sank. What complication? Your adoptive parents, he said carefully, have filed a lawsuit claiming they are entitled to half. That night I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I sat on the floor of my small apartment in Lyon, my back against the couch, staring at the wall while the lawyer's words repeated in my head. 23 million euros. It sounded ridiculous. Unreal. I had spent years counting coins to buy groceries. Years working late nights and surviving on instant noodles while trying to finish my architecture degree. Money like that didn't belong in my world. But what kept my heart racing wasn't the inheritance. It was the lawsuit. The people who had abandoned me at 16. The people who had driven away while I cried in the snow. Now wanted half of my grandmother's estate. Half of something they had nothing to do with. I kept hearing my mother's voice from that night. You've never really been ours. Apparently that changed once money appeared. The documents. The next morning a courier arrived at my apartment. He handed me a thick envelope stamped with legal markings. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were copies of the lawsuit. At the top of the document were 2 names I hadn't seen in 12 years. Gregory Whitmore. Patricia Whitmore. My adoptive parents. The people I used to call Mom and Dad. My chest tightened as I read their argument. They claimed they had raised me, fed me, educated me, and provided a home for 13 years. Therefore, they argued, they had a legal right to a portion of any inheritance I received. They were demanding 50%. 11.5 million euros. For abandoning a teenager in a foreign country. I felt sick. Sophie. I called the only person I trusted. Sophie, I said when she answered. My voice cracked. Can you come over? She arrived 20 minutes later with 2 coffees and a worried expression. Sophie had been my closest friend since university. She worked at the same architecture firm as me and knew more about my past than anyone else. When she stepped into my apartment, she immediately saw the papers scattered across the floor. What happened? I handed her the lawsuit. She read the first page. Then the second. By the third page, her jaw tightened. They're unbelievable. I know. They abandoned you. I know. And now they want money from you? Yes. Sophie placed the papers down carefully. They're not trying to win, she said quietly. What do you mean? They're trying to scare you. I frowned. Into what? Settling. Her words hung in the air. They think you'll pay them just to make the problem disappear. I stared at the documents again. The legal language suddenly made sense. They weren't trying to prove they deserved the money. They were trying to pressure me into giving it to them. The Facebook post. How did they even know about the inheritance? I asked. I only found out yesterday. Sophie hesitated. Then she pulled out her phone. Because of this. She turned the screen toward me. It was a Facebook post. From Patricia Whitmore. My heart started pounding as I read it. After years of heartbreak, our daughter has once again turned her back on us. We sacrificed everything to raise her, and now she refuses to share the inheritance she received from a European relative. Family should come before money. My stomach twisted. There were thousands of reactions. Comments filled the page. How ungrateful. Parents deserve respect. That poor couple. Someone had even written. I heard she inherited millions. I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. She told everyone, I whispered. Before you even knew about the inheritance, Sophie said. She's controlling the narrative. The phone call. My phone rang at that exact moment. Unknown number. Something in my chest told me who it was. I answered. Hello. A familiar voice filled the line. Soft. Trembling. Practiced. Lena, sweetheart. My entire body went cold. It was Patricia. My adoptive mother. I hadn't heard her voice in 12 years. We need to talk, she said gently. My hands trembled. Why are you suing me? Suing, she gasped, as if offended. Honey, that's such an ugly word. My stomach twisted. We're not suing you. Then what are you doing? We're just trying to make things fair for the family. The word family made something inside me snap. What family? I asked quietly. You told me I was never part of yours. There was a pause. Then she spoke again. You misunderstood what we said back then. Misunderstood? My hands started shaking. You left me at an airport. We were helping you find your roots. I was 16. You were curious about France. I was crying. Children cry about everything. The coldness in her voice made my chest burn. I ended up in a group home, I said. And look at you now, she replied quickly. You turned out fine. I actually laughed. It burst out of me like something broken. You're serious? I said. We made a difficult decision, she continued. But clearly it worked out. Her husband's voice appeared in the background. Gregory. Put it on speaker, he said. Suddenly he was on the line. Lena, he said calmly. There's no reason for this to become a legal battle. My heart pounded. You already made it one. Let's meet in person, he continued. We can talk like adults and settle this privately. Without lawyers. Without witnesses. Without proof. Sophie's earlier words echoed in my mind. They want to pressure you. I took a slow breath. No. There was silence. What do you mean no? He asked. I mean my lawyer will speak to your lawyer. Patricia's voice cracked dramatically. You're breaking my heart. My voice was suddenly steady. You broke mine first. And I hung up. The truth begins to surface. My phone buzzed again 10 minutes later. A message from the lawyer. Jean-Luc Moreau. Call me when you can. There's something important in the adoption records. My stomach tightened. Adoption records? I called him immediately. Miss Whitmore, he answered. I've been reviewing documents your grandmother requested years ago. What kind of documents? Your adoption file. My heart started racing. What did you find? He hesitated. Your adoptive father worked in banking in the early 2000s. So, he handled international clients. I didn't understand yet. Then he said the next sentence slowly. One of those clients was your grandmother. The room went silent. They knew. I whispered. I can't prove it yet, he said carefully. But the timeline suggests they were aware of her wealth long before they adopted you. My breath caught. 13 years of memories flashed through my mind. Birthday parties. Family photos. Holidays. All of it suddenly felt fake. You're saying. My voice barely came out. They adopted me for money? I'm saying, he replied gently. That possibility needs to be investigated. The email. That night another message arrived. An email. From someone named Clara Donovan. The subject line made my heart stop. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line read. My name is Clara Donovan. I was the social worker who handled your adoption case. Then came the sentence that changed everything. I recently discovered an email your adoptive father accidentally sent to the adoption agency years ago. It discussed the financial potential of adopting you. I felt the air leave my lungs. Then I read the last line. I'm flying to France next week. I'm willing to testify to everything. I read Clara Donovan's email 3 times before my brain finally processed the words. Financial potential of adopting you. My hands were trembling so badly I had to place my phone on the kitchen table. For 12 years I had believed something was wrong with me. I thought I had been too difficult, too emotional, too disappointing. I thought maybe that was why they sent me away. But now a different possibility was forming in my mind. Something darker. Something colder. Maybe I wasn't abandoned because I failed them. Maybe I was abandoned because I stopped being useful. The old memory. Suddenly a memory surfaced that I hadn't thought about in years. I was 10 years old. My father had been sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of documents. I remember because I had asked him for help with my math homework. He had barely looked at me. Instead, he was reading something carefully while my mother stood behind him. What does it say? She asked quietly. He had flipped the page and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then my mother had said a sentence that stuck in my mind for years. 21. That's when she gets it. At the time, I didn't understand what they were talking about. Now I wondered if I finally did. Meeting the lawyer. 2 days later I took the train to Provence to meet the lawyer in person. Jean-Luc Moreau's office was in a small stone building overlooking rows of vineyards stretching across the hills. It was beautiful. Quiet. Peaceful. The kind of place where people came to drink wine and forget their problems. I felt completely out of place walking inside with a lawsuit hanging over my head. The receptionist guided me into his office. Jean-Luc stood when I entered. He was in his early 50s, tall, with silver hair and the calm posture of someone who had spent his life dealing with complicated situations. Miss Whitmore, he said kindly. Please sit. He placed a thick folder on the desk between us. Your grandmother kept records, he explained. What kind of records? Everything. My grandmother's investigation. Jean-Luc opened the folder. Inside were copies of letters, financial reports, and emails that stretched back nearly 15 years. Your grandmother, Isabelle Laurent, tried to locate you several times, he explained. My heart skipped. She did. Yes. But every time she contacted the adoption agency, she was told you had moved and couldn't be reached. My stomach twisted. Who told them that? He slid one document across the desk. It was a letter. Signed by Gregory Whitmore. The words blurred for a moment as I read them. Lena Whitmore no longer wishes to maintain contact with biological relatives in France. My chest tightened. I never said that. I know, Jean-Luc replied. And your grandmother suspected the same thing. The hidden account. He turned another page in the file. Your grandmother created a trust fund in your name shortly after you were adopted. I blinked. When I was adopted? Yes. The number printed on the document made my breath catch. 5 million euros. She wanted to make sure you were financially protected when you became an adult, he explained. So why didn't I receive it? Because the trust required confirmation of your identity and location when you turned 21. My pulse started racing. And your adoptive parents? He paused. Reported to the agency that you had moved abroad and cut all contact. The room went silent. That meant something terrifying. They knew, I whispered. Jean-Luc nodded slowly. They knew about the money. The real reason I was sent away. My mind replayed Christmas Eve again. The suitcase. The plane ticket. The address of the group home in Marseille. Everything suddenly made sense in the worst possible way. They sent me to France, I said slowly. Yes. But they made sure I had no way to contact my grandmother. Jean-Luc folded his hands. That appears to be the case. My chest felt hollow. They were waiting. For what? For your grandmother to die. The words sat between us like something poisonous. And when she did, he continued carefully, they assumed the inheritance would pass through you, which they could then claim a portion of. I stared at the vineyard outside the window. Rows and rows of grapes under warm sunlight. It was peaceful. But inside my head everything was collapsing. The unexpected arrival. That afternoon, as I walked out of the lawyer's office, my phone buzzed again. Sophie. I answered. You need to sit down, she said immediately. My stomach tightened. Why? They're here. Who? Your parents. The words felt unreal. In France? Yes. They posted a picture at Charles de Gaulle Airport this morning. My heart started pounding. Why would they come here? To pressure you in person. My hands clenched around the phone. Or to manipulate you, Sophie added quietly. The vineyard. I returned to the lawyer's office and told Jean-Luc what Sophie had said. He frowned. That was fast. What do we do? For now, nothing. But as he said that, the receptionist knocked on the office door. She looked uneasy. Excuse me, monsieur, she said. Yes. There's a couple here asking for Mademoiselle Whitmore. Jean-Luc and I exchanged a look. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. They're already here, I whispered. The first time I saw them again. They were standing in the hallway when I stepped outside the office. 12 years had passed. But I recognized them instantly. Gregory Whitmore still stood tall and rigid like a man who believed he was always right. Patricia Whitmore looked almost exactly the same too, perfect hair, expensive coat, and a carefully practiced expression of concern. For a moment none of us spoke. Then my mother smiled. The same smile she used in photographs. Lena, she said softly. Like nothing had ever happened. Like she hadn't abandoned a 16-year-old girl at an airport. We've missed you. My chest felt strangely calm. Maybe because something inside me had already broken years ago. What are you doing here? I asked. My father stepped forward. We came to fix this situation. What situation? The inheritance problem. I almost laughed. You mean the lawsuit you filed? That's just a formality, he replied smoothly. We're family. Family. The word sounded completely meaningless now. My mother stepped closer and touched my arm gently. Sweetheart, she whispered. You don't really want strangers controlling your life, Do you? I stared at her. What do you mean? Her eyes flicked toward the lawyer's office. Lawyers will take advantage of you, she said. You don't understand how money works. My father nodded. That's why we're here. To help manage your inheritance. The truth hit me all at once. They didn't just want half. They wanted control of everything. Then my phone buzzed. A new email. From Clara Donovan. The subject line made my stomach drop. I found the email Gregory Whitmore sent in 2008. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a screenshot of a message my adoptive father had written to the adoption agency. One sentence stood out like a knife. The child's grandmother owns several vineyards in Provence worth millions. Adopting her could become a very smart long-term investment. My heart stopped. Because suddenly everything made sense. I looked up slowly at the two people standing in front of me. And for the first time in my life, I realized the truth. They had never wanted a daughter. They wanted an investment. The lawsuit quickly moved to a French civil court. Lena's adoptive parents claimed they sacrificed years raising her and deserved part of the inheritance. They tried to present themselves as loving parents betrayed by an ungrateful daughter. But Lena's lawyer, Jean-Luc Moreau, came prepared. First, he presented the email Gregory Whitmore sent to the adoption agency describing Lena as a long-term investment. Then Clara Donovan, the former social worker, testified. She confirmed Gregory had asked multiple questions about Lena's wealthy grandmother and inheritance before the adoption was finalized. The courtroom grew silent. The judge began to understand the truth. The adoption may have been motivated by money from the start. During the hearing, Jean-Luc introduced a sealed letter written by Lena's grandmother, Isabelle Laurent, years earlier. The letter explained that Isabelle had tried repeatedly to contact Lena but had been told Lena did not want contact. Isabelle wrote something heartbreaking. If my granddaughter ever reads this, I want her to know I never stopped looking for her. She also wrote that she suspected Lena's adoptive parents were hiding the truth. Her final line stunned the courtroom. If anyone tries to take what belongs to my granddaughter, I trust the court will protect her. The case took another dramatic turn when a former banking colleague of Gregory Whitmore came forward. He revealed that Gregory had once bragged at work that he had found a way to secure a millionaire inheritance through adoption. The testimony shocked the court. Gregory tried to deny it, but the witness produced old emails and notes from business conversations. Suddenly the lawsuit began collapsing. Instead of looking like caring parents, Gregory and Patricia looked like people who had planned a financial scheme. After several days of testimony, the judge delivered the final decision. The courtroom was completely silent. The ruling was clear. Gregory and Patricia Whitmore had no legal right to Lena's inheritance. Their lawsuit was dismissed completely. Because the court believed their case was filed in bad faith, they were ordered to pay Lena's legal costs. The judge ended with a powerful statement. Parenthood is not an investment strategy. Lena finally felt 12 years of pain begin to lift. Months later, Lena returned to Provence. For the first time she visited her grandmother's vineyard and villa. Walking through the fields, she felt something she had never felt before. Belonging. She decided to restore the vineyard and turn part of the estate into a foundation helping abandoned children and teens. Because she knew exactly what it felt like to be left alone. One evening she stood on the hill overlooking the vineyards as the sun set. The wind moved gently through the rows of grapes. And for the first time in her life, Lena whispered something she had never been able to say before. I'm home.